Tuskegee Experiment: How the U.S. Turned its Citizens into Test Subjects. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment is one of the most shocking instances of medical abuse in U.S. history. This 4-decade-long program not only brutally violated human rights, but also shattered trust in the American healthcare system, particularly among African American communities. Accusations of racism, lies, and deliberate medical neglect during the Tuskegee experiment left a deep trauma that continues to resonate today. Historical background: Tuskegee in the face of an epidemic. In the 1930s, syphilis was a severe public health problem, especially in impoverished communities in the southern United States. At the time, no effective cure for the disease existed, and available treatments, based on mercury and arsenic, were often more toxic than the disease itself. In Macon County, where Tuskegee, Alabama was the capital, the situation was particularly dire. Syphilis affected about 36% of the Black community. Against this backdrop, in 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service, PHS, launched a study aimed at observing the natural progression of untreated syphilis in Black men. In reality, however, the experiment had far more complex and darker goals. The experiment research at the cost of human suffering. The program observed 600 African American men, 399 of whom had syphilis, with 201 serving as a control group. The participants were promised free health care, hot meals, and death insurance, a tempting offer for the poor, marginalized community. What they weren't told, however, was that they were carriers of a deadly disease. They were instead informed that they had bad blood, a vague term used to describe various ailments. When penicillin, an effective cure for syphilis, was discovered in the 1940s, the scientists deliberately withheld treatment from the participants. The goal was to observe how syphilis affected the body in its various stages until fatal complications arose. The men were not only denied treatment, but were also prevented from seeking medical help at other facilities where they might have received penicillin. Racial context: segregation, prejudice, and medical experimentation. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment could not have taken place without the racial context in which it was initiated. In the southern U.S., where racial segregation prevailed, African Americans were treated as second-class citizens. In Tuskegee, where most of the population was Black, living conditions were extremely difficult. Homes lacked running water, electricity, and sanitation. Overcrowding was common, and access to healthcare was virtually non-existent. Under such conditions, it was easy to recruit participants for the experiment. Macon County had only 2 medical facilities, and only one of them accepted Black patients. Moreover, access to education and health knowledge was minimal. Many of the study participants were illiterate, making it easier for the scientists to manipulate them. Racist medical prejudices, which assumed that Black people were more prone to syphilis due to their immoral lifestyle, only reinforced the belief that they could be treated as research material. Bad blood, misinformation, and manipulation. The participants were never told the truth. The men recruited for the study had no idea they were carriers of syphilis. They were informed they had bad blood, and their participation in the study earned them only small benefits, such as a free burial after death. Many gratefully accepted the medical care they had never previously received. As a result of the experiment, many never received help. 28 men died directly from the disease, and complications killed another 100. Many participants transmitted the disease to their wives, who in turn gave birth to infected children. The lives and health of these people were sacrificed on the altar of science, which disregarded their humanity. The end of the experiment: scandal and the fight for justice. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment lasted until 1972, when media reports revealed the extent of the U.S. Public Health Service's unethical actions. The scandal sparked outrage across the United States, particularly in African American communities, which felt betrayed by the government. Under public pressure, the study was terminated, and many people sought justice. In 1997, after years of fighting for recognition of the wrongs, President Bill Clinton officially apologized to the study's participants and their families. He acknowledged that the U.S. government had committed gross human rights violations and engaged in unethical medical practices. However, for many, the apology came too late. Hundreds of families had lost their loved ones, and the trauma caused by these events had left a lasting mark on generations. Tuskegee's legacy: distrust in the medical system. The Tuskegee experiment left a deep scar in the relationship between Black Americans and the U.S. healthcare system. To this day, many African American communities remain distrustful of doctors, and the trauma of the experiment has contributed to hesitancy toward vaccines, clinical trials, and medical care in general. At the same time, Tuskegee has become a cautionary tale against unethical research. In response to the scandal, the Belmont Report was introduced, establishing guidelines for protecting participants in clinical trials, including the requirement to obtain informed consent for participation in experiments. Conclusion: Tuskegee as a warning against medical abuses. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment not only exposed racism and discrimination in medicine, but also forced a reevaluation of scientific ethics. It has become a symbol of how racial prejudice can lead to inhumane practices, and a reminder that patient welfare must always come first. This tragic event forever altered medical standards, but also shattered trust in institutions that were supposed to protect citizens, only to expose them to death instead. The allegations were so serious that the Tuskegee experiment was ended in a single day. By the time the study was concluded, 28 volunteers had died from syphilis. Another 100 suffered from numerous complications that severely affected their quality of life. Most horrifying, however, was that due to the participants' lack of awareness, 40 of their wives were infected, and 19 children were born with congenital syphilis. In 1997, President Bill Clinton publicly apologized to the victims. It's no surprise that this experiment deeply undermined many Americans' trust in public health services.